nerds, happy Sunday and welcome to our weekly live chat. If you weren't here with us last week, we did a March Madness style bracket where we just fought it out with some of our favorite tropes, and today's chat is all about discussing the winner at length, and that winner is Cool House, the coolest of cool tropes. I'm very excited. I think there's a lot of fun tropes we could have talked about, but this one is just... this is the trope for me now that we've discussed it. So I'm super excited to talk about all of this with you guys. I'd love to hear anyone in the discussion section. If you have any comments, favorite cool houses, any of that, as always, please let us know. And to kick things off, our opening question is, of all the cool houses in any media, which would be the one you would want to live in? Megan, you get to go first.
I couldn't come up with one because my favorite cool houses are all houses I would not want to live in. So yeah, I've got a boring answer, but I couldn't come up with one because my favorite cool houses are all scary.
That's what I said in the pre-chat before you joined. I was like,
Really?
all the houses I can think of.
You don't want to live in Hill House?
Yeah, I would like to go to the Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights Hill House. Live there for 15 minutes.
Oh God!
And I love the vibes of like haunted houses until you find out they're haunted. Like those houses are always exciting, fun houses.
Yeah.
I like the old fixer-uppers with secret mysteries and stuff. It's just something always goes wrong. Misty Kate, I feel like maybe we can't see what you've tried to post because it says try that and I don't see a link. So if that is the case, YouTube is saying no thank you. All right, we'll mix it up since Emma's kind of had that answer. So Erin, what about you?
I was super torn. I have like 3 different ones I really like. I'll try to just stick to one because I don't want to take anyone else's. I really like the house in Practical Magic. Oh, Misty Kate said that too. I love the house in Practical Magic. Yeah, it's just it doesn't have any like special magical features like Hogwarts and their staircases or anything, but like I could really picture myself living in there and like hanging out in the greenhouse and stuff like that. So I love it.
Rachel, how about you?
I also just realized that the place that I want to stay is probably not an actual good place to like actually live.
What is it?
So originally I was going to say my favorite like living space in a book is From the Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern because it's a library that exists outside of space and time, and there's a ton of different rooms that are sometimes they're rooms and sometimes they lead to little pocket dimensions or like slips in time. And I'm like, oh, I would love to live there. But then I'm like, actually, would I? Because like, what if I have like a dinner date and then I accidentally like transfer myself 20 years in the future and then can't get back? Like, yeah. Oh, again, damn it. Yeah. So I'm thinking my like answer. Okay. Yeah. You know what? We'll talk about it later. But that was the answer that I originally thought of.
And
I do actually have.
I
do actually have an answer that everyone else helped me think of when I said I was having trouble thinking of good cool houses. And I would like to live in Howell's Moving Castle. Because one, the cool cranky fire Calcifer, he's amazing. And 2, for Howell. And 3, because of the door that can like take you to different cities. I think that would be cool to just like turn the
Missy
dial
Kate's
and
list is really good. Sorry.
Oh, good. I also like how before we started this chat, we were just like talking a little bit. Kelly called Calcifer the angry stove.
Yeah.
I did love a oops, there's a tear in the wall that leads to a world full of monsters. I did think that the Museum of Oddities that the girl lives in the Hollow Places.
Oh, yes. So cool.
I mean, before things started trying to come out of a hole.
Right. The wallpaper is
what?
haunted or whatever.
It's very cool. Great.
Ooh, I'm going to add that to my list.
You should.
It was
very
very good. But...
And okay. My answer was Hobbit Hole. Moving on, because this ties in well with...
Yes! I didn't even think of that.
Hobbit Hole, yeah.
If I had to pick honestly based on the lifestyle that I want, that is where I should go. So last week, as we were kind of talking about cool houses and getting into using cool houses in the plot, So sometimes they're just like cool setting versus in the hollow places, they've got all these like taxidermied animals that are going to be like
Mhm.
coming back to life to attack you later maybe and stuff like that. So
Do we
how
count?
important to you is it that like the cool house is plot relevant versus just a cool house?
It depends on the genre, I think. Like in horror, I want like the cool house to be like an important part of the story because I really enjoy that in horror. In fantasy, it can just be kind of a backdrop and fun stuff.
A cool house can be good like world building tools in fantasy. If like, look at all this cool thing magic can do that we just live here, so we can throw it in without it being too exposition-y.
Yeah, I feel like I don't need it to necessarily be a huge part of the plot, but whatever its job is in being cool, like if it is the world, if it is to tell you more about the character, like I need it to be really good at whatever part of the big triangle of story it is supposed to be helping.
Like
And not just like a cool house for the sake of having a cool house.
A cool house that you don't even get to explore. Like
like
I find that almost frustrating.
The cooler the house, the more time I want the characters to spend there. It doesn't even have to be like a sentient house, although that is very fun. But like have all your group meetings there. Have, that's like the home base. Circle back, like keep going there. I want to learn more.
I did love someone said the house with a clock in its walls. I really loved that was like a main plot was very much involving the house, like obviously even just by the title, and that was really cool. I actually really liked the magic in that house because it like the paintings reflected whatever mood the house was in, and like the furniture was sentient like Beauty and the Beast style. So I really liked that one. That would be cool.
Ooh, and Griswold said that they like the Baba Yaga house.
Yeah,
and absolutely. I love watching. Like, I've read a couple of Russian folklore inspired fantasy novels, and all of them have some iteration of a Baba Yaga house. And it's like, yes, I love the ones that move. They're so cool.
Is that the house with the chicken legs?
Yes,
so spooky.
I love Joe Catherine's answer to our opening question, which was would love to live in a haunted house, but as a ghost being unsettling and spooky.
Yeah. Let me be your poltergeist. I will make your house cool.
And Crazy
For a
Foxy
small
said, I'd love
fee.
to live in the hotel in The Shining. So very brave.
That JK afterwards.
I'm thinking of like houses with ghosts in them, but like in a good way. This was my other answer of like house I would actually want to live in, and that is the house from Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune, because it's so good. It's like this. It's a kind of like an in-between place where there are reapers and then like the souls of people who haven't moved on yet, and the reaper's job is to like help them move on. And the house is full of like family ghosts, so it's like a found family of like half people that are alive and half people that are dead, but like it's still
and also it's like a tea shop for the living.
Ooh,
yeah, it's
I
a tea shop at the same time, but it's like this weirdly stacked house. It's so cozy, and I love it that there's ghosts there, but it's in a fun way.
Do things like Hogwarts, obviously, and then the Camp Half-Blood, like would those count as houses? Not really. It has to be an actual
count
house.
I think castles are kind of their own thing.
Okay. Castles is a separate chat.
Well, like libraries aren't really like a house, but in some places that's where people live. So we're talking about like, like the TARDIS is not a house, but people sort of live in it. So, but like we were talking.
And if someone wanted to argue passionately about it, sure, but
yeah, that's more like cool car than it is like cool house,
Yeah. Well, kind of on the topic of libraries and whatnot, are there any like favorite features for you that like jump out as like, oh, this is a cool house? Because like when I was watching the Willoughbys for movie night, and there was like the attic was just full of books. I'm like, oh, cool house. So, is there anything like that for you guys?
Door that does not open.
Secret rooms. Yeah.
I say secret passageways.
Yeah, locked doors, secret
stairways
passageways.
that lead nowhere.
Any
very
sort of,
large
like, strange
fireplace.
layout.
Yeah. Yeah, I like rooms that like don't lead where they should type of thing, you know? So Lighthouse Moving Castle, the door that just like can take you different places, or like the Red Room in Hill House in the show where like it's a different room for everyone. Sorry, spoilers.
I do love stuff too that's like everyday items that are magic. Like the Weasley's house is an obvious one where you look in the corner and there's knitting doing itself and the dishes are washing themselves, and like I really love
chore magic.
Sure, I do. I love little like practical magic. Like you can see that someone's using it in an everyday scenario, and it's like it's such a little, it's a tiny thing. It's not really plot relevant, but I don't know. I love details like that.
I'm also a big fan of cool room in Cool House. Like for some reason, the first one that came to mind for me was like Inside Out, where they move to the house that like looks awful, but then the girl goes upstairs and like the room is a very cool shape, and it's like, oh, the room is gonna look cool. Or wasn't it in your book, Kelly, Four of a Kind, where like she gets a cool room? I feel like I remember there being a cool room with windows, and I was like, oh yeah,
yeah,
cool
I think
room.
so.
Or like in Playing Bad Heroines, there's like the tower that's in the middle of the house, or like Spike Tower. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
I think my favorite part about like cool houses in general, but also cool rooms, is like you can even see I have my art wall behind me. I'm somebody who loves little like curiosities and knickknacks, and having that like, I guess like the Weasley house is that maximalist aesthetic, but with like odd, small, curious objects. I love when a character will walk into an odd room and just like comment on a couple of weird things, but then make the statement that like, and everything in the room is like that, or that kind of thing, where it's like,
you should really read the
magic.
Holopieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much what it is.
I was looking at this list that Misty Kate made that is in the discussion section, linked in it, and thinking about like the Knives Out house very much is that just like so many, and I love that in a mystery novel where it's like the house is full of things, and you know like 3 of those things are going to be crucial, and I'm always going to latch on to the wrong one every single time, and I love it.
Because I was trying to think about that, of like we talked last week a bit about how Cool House kind of manifests in different genres, and with mystery it was kind of just like you just need to be very aware of the layout and what's important, and like 'cause you can do Cool House a lot of different ways. In mystery it tends to be like Old Manor House, but yeah, just being aware of how everything kind of intersects and
what's on the walls. Is there a pistol on the wall? Is there a sword on the wall?
Ruth Ware's The Turn of the Key, which was a retelling of The Turn of the Screw. It was like a big smart house, which was a fun twist on.
Interesting.
Because it's old haunted house originally, and so now it's like new, very tech savvy, but haunted house.
But weird things keep happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
The technology keeps like going screwy. Yeah.
Oh, screwy. I'm thinking that's something that I love this in just like general. This is why I like fairy magic. This is why I like weird, creepy magic horror novels, is because like if you look at something and it's just a little off, but you can't quite tell why, that like uncanny valley is something that's like so fun. So yeah, like a house that the paintings change and it takes a couple goes by for the character to realize that like that frame was blue yesterday, or yeah, you're going into the kitchen and it's like that, you know, oh, that rocking chair wasn't there yesterday, like that kind of thing. I think that's so fun.
Joe Catherine mentioned a house that I considered as one of my favorites, or ones I'd want to live in, and it was the house in Meet the Robinsons.
Yes.
And I think that kind of leads into something we were talking about pre-chat, which is like how much does like a cool family influence your feelings about a cool house?
Because the Willoughbys was a really cool house, but a very uncool family. So no one has been like, yeah, I want to go to there.
But like, yeah, Meet the Robinsons. I would love to live in that house and be a part of that family.
See, I thought about it for 2 seconds and I was like, I would love to live in that house for a week. And then it seems like it would be an introvert's nightmare after that.
Yeah, we're talking about the house and the Raven boys, and it's like it's purely the family, not the house. who's in
It
the
is
house.
somewhat a cool house because it's two houses that they've connected together and made into one house. I remember that. There's like two
Okay.
neighboring houses, and they like.
Well, they also
connected
run
them,
a
but
cool.
it's mostly
They also run a cool
business.
spooky business out of it and stuff too. So
Yeah, so if you're coming in from the outside, there's like cool knickknacks everywhere. Just it's not necessarily the house.
Yeah, I think that's another instance of cool room because, well, a couple cool rooms because like Blue's room is pretty cool, but then they also have the reading room, which is like where they read tarot cards, and it's like they do a lot of weird stuff in that room. So it's like if they go into that room, you know something cool is gonna happen. Whereas the house is like described as being like the hallways are small and like it's a little old fashioned, but I would still want to go there. But I want to go there because of the characters, not necessarily because like the house seems amazing.
But like it gives me similar vibes to like the Weasley house of like there's something about like
absolutely.
a cramped chaos house of like okay, maybe it doesn't necessarily matter what house it is, but I want to be part of this.
Well, they have the like what is it like phone sewing cat room. Because they just have a room that's like full of random junk, and I'm like, yeah.
I think it comes back to again, like I do feel like the house has to be tied to something else, and so like a cool house that's telling you a lot about the characters, like its job is to be populated by the characters. A haunted house is usually less like indicative of the people who currently live there. I guess just like having to be aware of like who you're putting in the cool house. Like, is it supposed to represent the people who are in there right now, the people who've been in there before, and like how the people who are entering the house are going to be affected by all the things in it is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially if it's a chaos house, be that magical or non-magical. Yeah, having I loved seeing the juxtaposition of like two characters walking in, and maybe one of them it's their family's house, and so there's chaos, there's stuff on the walls, and there's like siblings running around, and they're like, yeah, whatever, like no big deal. And then the other character is, you know, walking into this chaos and being like, oh, this is so weird, or like, oh, that throw blanket, like that kind of thing. Maybe that's just me because I didn't have siblings, so walking into anybody's house that has siblings is like, whoa, this is crazy.
Mentioning Meet the Robinsons also made me think of the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse.
Yeah,
because it's when you get to like wander around, sort of, if you go to Disney World. So it's always kind of stuck out to me, even though that show is or movie is old. I don't know, never seen it, but they're like you're building in all these different rooms in the trees that are like connected by rope bridges and stuff. I could get on board.
Oh, that reminds me of in Lord of the Rings, the like elf tree village. I was obsessed with that scene. Yeah, it's beautiful. That would be cool.
Misty Kate had said there are so many of these houses in old like 1970s Disney live action movies. So many of the like features we've mentioned, my brain is going, I saw something as a kid. There was something. And this does feel like something you see a lot more of in like middle grade and like cool houses and those cool features and everything has this sense of wonder to it is maybe a little more commonplace. But
I forgot
the cool houses you'd actually want to live in.
Yeah.
I forgot the house in the new Sabrina TV show, which I was saying earlier before the chat. I was literally pausing the TV show repeatedly so I could look at the decor. But I also forgot it has outside in the garden, if you bury a body, they come back to life. So that would be a handy garden to have, I guess.
That's just a Pet Cemetery scenario waiting to happen.
Except for people. Like only a mild spoiler, but one of the ants is always killing the other ant and burying her in the garden, and she comes back to life every time. Sisterly feud.
Oh, y'all need to go to some therapy, my God.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something, now away. Gardens in general are usually like yes for me. Like,
same.
Or anything with like big old trees or like I don't know, just like the witchy cabin wild garden feel. I'm always on board.
To actually go back to Turn of the Key, one of my favorite things in it is there's a poison garden on the property.
Ooh.
That was really cool.
I like any garden with like, poison or like man-eating plants and stuff.
Mhm.
Oh, you guys would absolutely love this Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron.
I'm reading that one right now too.
Hey! Well, it's a cool house because she like inherits this estate randomly, and then they go there, and it's like they actually have to clean it up and like dust it and get everything set up. And she finds that there's a garden, but also a big poison garden, and like that's such a beautiful setting of like the house and the woods and the garden is so cool.
I love a house that needs to be fixed up.
Yes.
Great.
Agreed.
Like I
Especially
really
with,
love
a secret door.
Not in real life.
Not in real life, but I love reading
in
about
book
it.
life.
Yeah.
See,
I
I'd be
love
on
this
board in
past
real life as well.
Yeah, this past holiday season, there was the new movie A Castle for Christmas, which was like very cheesy but very great. It was like Brooke it wasn't Hallmark, it was on Netflix. It was like Brooke Shields and Carrie Elwes, and she plays an author. She's like an author whose like latest book has like bombed, and she goes to Scotland for inspiration. But anyway, like he has this
amazing
Scottish castle that's like kind of falling apart, and she's in love with it, and like it was great. I was like, I want to live in a Scottish castle that needs some work.
It's really, that reminds me, it's really terrible, but I watched this show set in like in Ireland, in a tiny town in Cork, and it was a documentary about a murder that happened, but all I could fixate on was the house the murder victim lived on and how much I wanted it, and I finished it, and I was like, oh my god, that documentary was so good. And my husband's like, oh, it was like disturbing. And I was like, no, I want to go there. I just want her house. It's so bad. But it was just this like,
well, she's not using it anymore.
I didn't say that. I'm glad I didn't say that. It was like, it's a really old murder case. It's terrible. But the house is like on the cliffside, essentially at the side of the ocean. And it's just like this tiny, wild, sea wind buffeted house in Cork, Ireland. And it was just ridiculously beautiful.
Actually, there's a book that I want to read, The Lighthouse Witches.
Oh, I have that. I just bought it.
Nice. But like that idea of like that tiny small house on like the edge of the world, and like how that affects like the setting, and like but like also the dynamic of characters in such a small isolated place. Yeah, I'm looking forward to starting it.
Misty Kate Aaron was like, is it for sale? Yeah, that was
I mean, the way the housing market is.
Right? You got to take whatever you can. Yeah.
Well, lighthouses, I've seen a TikTok recently, someone asking, like, how do you become a lighthouse keeper? Do you just have to kill the previous tenant and whatnot? So,
I have a friend who is like writing a book that is a lighthouse one, and I am desperate for it.
Oh.
Is that just how the lighthouse system works? You have to challenge the previous lighthouse.
That is the question. Nobody knows.
Combat. Winner inherits the lighthouse.
Bless him.
Can I think of any other like houses with a job of like
With a
lighthouse? You're a lighthouse keeper. I feel like I like that idea, but I can't think of any other than being a lighthouse keeper.
Mortuaries,
right?
You live in the mortuary.
Ooh, Sabrina House also has a mortuary on the bottom.
Oh, that's right. Maybe like a
groundskeeper.
Yeah,
groundskeeper. What about like the light the torch signal type of thing in Lord of the Rings or whatever? Would there be like
you have to like watch area? For the other.
Yeah,
like a garrison.
Yeah, garrison kind of. Yeah, a shepherd's hut. Like I think about that. The house isn't the job, but
I feel like I read a romance novel last year where someone lived in the bookstore that they owned.
Oof, that would be amazing.
I feel like I've heard a couple of those. Yeah. Well, so there's actually a place, and of course, me and my half knowledge, I'm like, it might be in Scotland, it might be in Ireland, it might be even in England, but it's somewhere in Northern Europe, where it's you can like pay your stay by working at the bookstore downstairs. So like that the deal is that you get like free quote unquote room and board, but you have to work at the bookstore for like however long you're staying there. And I'm like, I want to go so bad.
You have to work at the bookstore.
There's definitely a romance novel with that premise. I
Oh,
remember starting it last year, but I didn't finish it, I don't think.
I think that sounds amazing.
Kayla said, in this economy, I think that a reverse harem is the only fiscally responsible way to get a cool house. And like, not so much
Sensible.
reverse harem, but like, okay, not at all reverse harem, because we've talked about like ordinary compound. And like, I'd love to see more of that kind of thing in books.
Still not a reverse harem even slightly.
We just have to find one partner who will take all of us.
Whose harem are we? Oh no.
Yeah,
I would love to read a book
Small
if-
communities.
Yeah, I would love to read a book if anyone has any recs of like a friend group that's like, let's actually buy a house, like actually move together. I feel like that's every friend group's dream. Is like, yeah, we're all gonna live just right on time, and I want to see it.
Move into
Another like
London.
classic childhood home is Full House is kind of that of like
Mhm.
somebody died is why we got here, but now we have a cool house. So
Well, hopefully none of us have to die to get all
Lord.
together.
I love a house with the yellow wallpaper vibes. Thinking like Mexican Gothic. You know, a house is slowly driving one person in it mad. I just got The Death of Jane Lawrence, I think it's called. And I just started it, and it is pitched as like yellow wallpaper, Mexican Gothic, Rebecca.
Whoa.
Nice.
Very excited
Sounds
for
good.
it.
The house in, did you guys see Crimson Peak?
Yes.
That house was gorgeous, but again, it comes chock full of ghosts. So I mean,
And it comes with a basement just full of like vats of red stuff. Like, why wouldn't you want that?
who wouldn't?
I
want
mean,
that?
hey, if they're
Selling
throwing that in
points.
for the asking price, you know,
Yeah.
you're getting
It's
a
also
steal.
it's also sinking into the clay really slowly.
Yeah.
So I mean,
And just
wonderful,
lots of defunct machinery outside.
right?
Well, that's a liability, so I don't know
Yeah.
about that.
You know, the real estate agents would have all these different ways of spinning this, so it was a good
Oh,
thing.
of course.
For sure.
You could resell it for
dead
scrap.
women in the walls, extra tenants that don't, eat your food.
Yeah, but they don't pay rent, so like kind of rude. They're gonna have to leave.
That's true, right? Good point.
Yes, I do love like in a cool house when there is like something, whether it's spooky or not, like something that someone is fixated on in the house, and you just like keep coming back to it. And as a reader, like every time it's brought up again, they want me to know this is important later.
Going on.
And I love the anticipation of like, well, when is that thing in the cool house gonna be important?
Mhm. Well, here's a question of like when you write, if and when you write your own cool house or like cool room, like what do you like to write about? Like how do you work it into your story? Do you like to focus on one room of the house, or are you just like the whole thing is magical and that's it?
I think there's usually like one room that I know like a few really cool things about. And so when I'm first drafting, it's like that one room is really cool. And then usually I like if one room's going to be cool, I like for the whole house to be cool. And so in revisions, I try and flesh it all out to match the one room.
Is there something that you guys like focus on, like pictures that change, or like a door or of some
I
kind?
love mirrors.
Ooh,
Love
yes.
mirrors.
Definitely. I write a lot of like old Gothic-y houses, like a lot of foreboding mansions. I feel like that just naturally comes up for me. And so usually they just have, I don't like, a lot of the time they're not actually haunted or anything. It's just a spooky setting.
Okay, I feel like I've got a bunch of different comments based on, or questions based on people's comments. So I'm trying to get to the top. Also, Septimus Heap sounds really cool. I've never read it, but next time I feel middle grade. That sounds fun. Emmy had said, I love seeing the way houses can directly interact with the characters, and Unkindness of Magicians does this really well, tying the houses into the magic system. So that really makes me want to read that. New idea, Joe Catherine. Landlord calls medium not to banish ghosts, but to find a way to make them pay rent.
Mm.
I was trying to think earlier of like ghost
Capitalism
situations,
versus.
but ghost
Death and
the
taxes.
UK/US show of like you get an old man.
Yeah.
They're not spooky ghosts, but they're inconvenient ghosts who won't leave.
Who are actively trying to get you to leave because you want to make it a business. Like if you just wanted to live there, it would be fine.
And then Ed Griswold asks, what's your favorite style of architecture for these houses? She also likes the house from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Mm-hmm.
The charmed Hallowell sisters house, I think, has like set that tone for me forever. I will take like an old Victorian any day.
It's like, is it like an old Victorian farmhouse, or is it not really a farmhouse?
There's an farmhouse. They're in San Francisco.
Okay.
I do love a farmhouse also, though.
I do love a farmhouse without any farm animals outside of it, though. I don't need a farm aside from a few goats.
Also
I
love
get
a
me
good
like,
gothic mansion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Give me some gabled roofs. Give me some nice like peaked architecture.
Gargoyles on the outside, you know.
Oh yeah, gargoyles.
Yeah, not my vibe. I'd like it. I just don't feel like I would feel at home there.
Yeah, I don't want to
like
live there. I
houses-
just like it for a cool house.
No,
Yeah.
I like houses that have some kind of like the gargoyles remind me, some kind of like self-protection. You know what I mean?
A moat.
Yeah, like a moat is good, but something magical too.
A magical moat.
Thank you. It's like bed knobs and broomsticks where she's like the house is under attack and like all the suits of armor come to life and stuff like that. And I think the clothes come out of her closet and attack her too.
I'm gonna have the chant in my head from that scene for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Anything with like witchy vibes, like even if that's not the plot of the story, like even I think it's Erin has a like witchy looking house in her neighborhood she sent us pictures of.
Oh, yeah. Did I already send you pictures of that?
I feel like yes.
I probably did. I've been obsessed with
But
it for a long
any
time.
of those houses I'm always drawn to. Of like,
I love in like, I think you most often see it in thrillers, a cool house that's like mid-century modern. There's a lot of minimalism and a lot of windows. And they like show up and you like, oh, it's so peaceful. But
someone's
then,
gonna get murdered in this really clean area.
Yeah, someone's gonna get murdered. There's so many windows that there's no way there's no one looking in any of them.
Mhm.
Like Parasite is a really good example of like a very modern house where like crazy stuff happens.
Yeah, I feel like horror movies do that a lot with like all of the open windows and you know someone's watching you through all of them. Like
Parasite reminds me of I love not in a type of cool house I want to live in, but in a horror house or a thriller house to read about or watch something with. I love a cool house where there's like someone living in it who shouldn't be living in it.
Ooh,
That's a big thing in
Spooky.
Parasite. Yeah, I love that. Like there's like the character doesn't know this other person's living in it. Or like a classic example is like Jane Eyre. Like the wife is living in the attic.
I literally just watched a true story about that where the man's wife had died.
How much murder stuff do you watch?
A lot. Daily, a lot. But no, this one wasn't murder. The man's wife had passed away of cancer and he was hearing all this tapping in the walls and his two young daughters were like, it's mom, she's trying to communicate. And he kept telling them no. And this went on for months until they saw like drawing on the wall. So something had been drawing on their walls saying like, I'm here and hello and stuff. And so they finally got the police involved and they couldn't figure out what it was until one day they were coming home and they heard something inside. They called the cops. The cops shows up on time and they had like come a million times before and they could never find this person. They come in, they finally caught him and he was standing in the dad's closet dressed in the deceased mom's dress. And he had a hatchet in his hand. So he'd been wearing all of the mom's clothing and he had been living in the walls.
Cool house.
That's a story, don't like it in real life.
That's a real story. That actually happened.
That's bananas. Oh my god.
Okay, so terrifying in real life. In like horror books, I'm usually disappointed by it's not a ghost. There's just
True.
person.
Although
True.
wearing the dead wife's dress is like another level of of spooky.
I think it can be done well, but it's disappointing if you're like, I really want to read a haunted house book.
If you want it to
like,
be
I know
ghost.
it happened
Yeah.
to Megan a couple times, and it's not
It's
actually haunted.
3 times last year it happened to me where I was reading a
Oh.
haunted house book. It was pitched as a haunted house
And it
book
wasn't
with
ghost.
and it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's false
Like, it works.
advertising. How rude.
It's like Parasite is not pitched as haunted house, you know, so like it works
Yeah.
in that one really
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
I have a lot of feelings about this. And I get it like ruins your twist if
Yeah, like we can never
If
talk
you
about any
know, right.
ruins these books. But
yeah, but then I also want to be like, well, don't read this one because it's good. Don't read it because you want a haunted house book.
Mhm.
Okay, I have
And
to
I've-
apologize to N. Griswold. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're not going to sleep tonight. That was my fault. My bad.
And I would say, without spoiling it, I've read, I think, one of the 3 books that Megan read that were like that. And I feel like the one I've read was really good because it did kind of keep you questioning the whole time. Like I think it did a good job of kind of like setting up like, there's a possibility that these are actual people, you know? Like, I was always
I
the
know
entire
the
time I
other
was
two
wondering,
are.
I was like,
Megan
I don't
put
know what the
the
other ones
in
are.
chat. I know which one
Yeah.
I'm thinking of. But,
Yeah, let me know too. I'm very curious because I read one of the same ones you did. I know that.
In the meantime,
We're
Emmy
gonna
has
find out.
asked, does anyone work foreshadowing into their writing through houses? When I'm reading, I love looking for clues in the setting, thinking of a series of unfortunate events, and Count Olaf's house.
I don't do that,
Mm.
but I like that idea. I might start doing that. I like that. I do like when a house is basically another character. Somebody said that up in the comments. But yeah, when a house is like, you can feel like it has almost like it has intent or it has a motivation. Like a lot of time it's bad. A lot of time it's evil, but it does kind of make it a separate character itself.
Oh, yeah, I
find
do
that
like
really
that.
fascinating. Yeah.
And I love it when it's not evil, like the house in Encanto. I do feel
Mhm.
like there was some
Yeah.
prejudice against who got good
Yeah.
bedrooms, but
No magic for you.
like having like a house that is sentient and feels like part of your family is, I think, one of my favorites. I just haven't seen it very much.
It's probably hard to do well, I would think. Because
Because usually a house is like, it's very specifically at a certain place.
Yeah.
Except for Howl's Moving Castle or maybe the Baba Yaga house that can like walk around. It's hard to have a house like as a character if you're not in it all the time.
Right.
Yeah. And there's other ways to like not make it the house specifically, of like Beauty and the Beast, technically castle, not this trope, but having like all the furniture people and like the house feels alive because of other bits of it. Also just that, like if we were counting castles, the library in there and spooky towers. But
Well, I don't think it was explicitly evil. I just think the people in it were weird. Do you remember anybody who's read The Library at Mount Char? I don't think the library house was evil. It was very weird and it was really cool, but I don't think it sort of had I don't remember if it had like a true personality, but that was definitely an amazing house. I think at one point the characters look up and it looks like there's a solar system above them, like hanging from the ceiling, but it's like actually the cosmos because of like this weird dimensional magic.
I'm on board. No, just reading Megan's comments.
I realized it might have happened 4 times. I can't remember.
No wonder you were so mad.
If that last one actually wasn't ghosts. But yeah, too many times. And Riley Sager got me twice because I didn't know he was a thriller author. Include both of his. So the first time I read a Riley Sager book, I was like, what? It's not ghosts. And then the second time I was like, this probably isn't, but he's making it feel like it is. And it wasn't again.
If we know every time it's not ghosts, it's not like a twist anymore.
Well, I don't think he was trying to make it a twist. It was just that I didn't understand that Riley Sager was only a thriller writer at the time that I started reading Riley Sager.
Speaking of ghosts, not ghosts, what is the name of where the boys live in the Raven Boys?
Monmouth
Oh,
Manufacturing.
Yeah.
That's a cool house.
I forgot
That's
about
good.
that. I love that place. See,
There's
that's
a lot
a
of,
cool.
like,
That's a cool.
Cool
house.
dude houses of like a lot of them are just like,
Yeah.
oh, so cozy and homey and magical. This is like a boy house.
Yeah. It's
Well,
an old
also-
factory that they just live in the
Yeah.
offices.
Yeah. I think they have a fridge next to their toilet.
Yeah.
And I specifically remember that Gansey creates a cardboard replica of the town because he has insomnia and can't sleep at night. So he just
Oh,
like
yeah.
glues together a little town that's like in the apartment. And I know they're talking about like we're walking down Main Street right now because he does it at night. Yeah, it was cool.
You
It was
know,
like a good vibes
something-
from it.
Something funny is when I was much, much younger and read The Boxcar Children, I thought it would be so cool to make a house in an abandoned train. And now as an adult, I'm like, that would be so terrible. Like,
Well, we were kind of discussing this a little earlier too of like if you're a child, you're probably going to look at cool houses a little differently than like adults.
very differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
We're
the
all
work
like,
that's
I
gotta
love
go
to live
into
in an
it.
abandoned castle, except for the fact that I
Yeah.
have to pay to fix it up. So
Exactly. Yeah, we
Go-
were talking about the Weasley house in particular because I used to live in houses, obviously not magical, but it's in a similarly run down, cluttered but homey type of environment. And as a child, I liked those houses because they were always new houses we rented, and I always got to like run through the floors, and there was like tons of different rooms and stuff. So we always rented old farmhouses and stuff. But of course, I wasn't an adult. I wasn't thinking like, oh my God, I have to fix the roof. It's leaking. Oh my God, I have to re-tile and re-grout the bath. And the bathtub, is it leaking? Is the roof rotting? Like my dad had to deal with all of that, right? So as an adult, yeah,
like you look at the Hill House and like that summer for the kids, Ghosts Aside would have been very different than the summer that these two parents
the adults had.
Ooh,
Yeah,
parents just running the whole thing.
stressful.
I don't know. Like, did they not get an inspection of that house? What happened?
yeah, I feel like a lot of these houses wouldn't be in these media forms if they had gotten an inspector in there in the
Just
first
one
place.
inspection.
Yeah, but that's what I was
One.
gonna
Just
write.
like, yep, there's
for,
ghosts. And you're like, great, not moving in.
Yeah.
Nano, I wanted to do like a game, a kind of like a millennial horror of like we can't do house inspections anymore. The housing market is terrible, and you could just you're forced into what is obviously not a good living situation because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, it's like those movies where there's obviously a murderous ghost, and you're like, why don't you move? And now it's like, I can't. There's literally nowhere else to go. I can't.
And that was gonna be part of the game of like just so your like savings go down and down of like how far are you willing to go before you can't afford to leave.
I love
Murderous
this so much.
ghost, or you're on the street.
I would 100% flip that.
One
I would
day.
also
It's on my
love-
list for the year.
I would love to read a book that's about like a home inspector who keeps
God,
going in
yes.
and finding ghosts. And it's like, I don't know how to tell these people this.
Well, isn't there a law? Is this wrong? Where there's the law that you have to disclose if somebody recently died in the house? Or am I
Depends on where you
depends.
are. I know in the US
Okay.
it depends on the state.
Okay, interesting.
There's a scene of that in the UK version of Ghosts because like one of the main characters, she hits her head and now she can see ghosts everywhere. So she's trying to leave the house with all the ghosts, but you go to other places and you're just seeing all these other ghosts. So it's just kind of like, nope, nowhere is good. They're all uncomfortable to look at. Just as you're living your
I mean,
life.
logistically, like if ghosts can exist, this plane is overrun with them. So you're probably not moving into any house. that
Yeah.
doesn't
And
work.
I was gonna
she's
say, I think-
British, so there's like World War II ghosts just hanging in the air because they got blown
for
out of the
sure.
sky. And like,
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
it's like
I
I feel like people get so fixated in old houses, but people die in new houses. all the
In
time.
every house, yeah, I'm sure at least if you have had a house that's not brand new that you didn't build yourself, somebody probably died in it. Like I don't think that where we live you have to disclose because I know that we didn't find out until much later that the old farmhouse we were renting, like my brother was sleeping in the ladies' room where she died, and like I asked. None of us knew as kids until we moved out. But yeah, she apparently died in that house, and then that's one of the reasons we got it cheap, is that I guess my dad knew the family or something and knew it was empty after that. But I remember asking, because I guess she was older and she didn't want to use a cane, because I remember that we had all these cupboards that were stuck open all the time, and if you tried to shut them they would drift back open, and it's because she apparently used the cupboards to like push herself around the kitchen because she was too stubborn to get a cane. And so we had all so they all got warped, so they always would open no matter how many
you had a
times
ghost.
Oh, probably. Yeah, we lived in a lot of different weird houses.
My brain is just like firing off all of these like funny horror scenarios, but like a realtor who's trying like deeply to disguise the fact that someone's been smoking in the house, and so they're trying to draw attention to the ghosts instead.
Ignore the yellow carpets, man.
Like you can put up with a little ghost, right? I mean, that's not a big deal.
Honestly, I would rather have ghosts than smokers.
Truly.
You can exercise ghosts, not smokers.
I swear I see that on, maybe it was like on Tumblr or something, about like a real estate agent who can see ghosts and is like showing off a house to somebody, and there's like a ghost that's like, "Woo, I'm gonna kill you," and she's like, "Knock it off, Jeff, like I'm here, stop scaring off all my clients, I want to sell this place."
I'm just here to show off the countertops. Stop threatening my life. Yeah. I think a ghostly Property Brothers type of thing or something, so that like it's like a reality TV show,
or like then you can just have so many cool houses.
Yeah. Like trying to move out and like knowing your mom is haunting your old house, so you want to like find her a nice family to move in. You want to leave, but your mom has to stay here.
I can't live with my mom anymore, but I don't want her to have people she hates.
That's great.
Kayla said, like, yeah, it has ghosts, but how's the water pressure?
Question.
I would absolutely watch a show of ghostly Property Brothers. That sounds really, really fun.
Property Brothers, but it's all haunted houses.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I would watch that.
I'm actually not related to ghosts, but I'm house sitting right now, and this is my neighbor's house. I've always loved it because it definitely has, like, they did an addition, so the root of the house doesn't make sense. There's a stairwell, like it's full stairs. It's like boarded off at the top of like it started to do something, didn't do it. You can get to the bedroom 2 different ways because like I could just go downstairs here, or there's other stairs over there. So we were talking earlier about like cool houses that are magic versus like the Charmed House or the Practical Magic House of just cool houses that are nice houses in real life. Now I forget where I'm going with it, but it's something to do with secret passageways and wanting like the bookcases to move.
Hell yes.
Oh man.
But there's like some example I want to talk about. Yeah. I don't remember where I was going with that, but yes, I want that. Just a secret room no one can find me in. But
yeah, a secret room is cool. And this is tangentially related. Did you ever remember hearing about the Winchester House? The woman who her husband owned the actual gun company. Yes, because she built a whole bunch of rooms that led to nowhere and staircases that led to nowhere and kept rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding. That is a bit, and that was real. Like if anyone wants to look that up, anyone in the comments, because that was very cool and very, very spooky.
Wasn't it like she was convinced that she was being haunted, and so she like was going to be haunted, so she wanted to make it so that the ghosts like couldn't find her or got lost in her house?
I don't know. I can't remember because I watched the horror movie they did about that, so I'm like a little confused about what was real and what was fictional. But there was something going on up there where she thought that she was compelled to never stop building this house. So throughout her whole life, she had contractors working on it constantly to build new rooms, new staircases, new passages. And a lot of them just led to nowhere. There was a lot of locked rooms, like weird stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So
Rachel's show already exists.
I'm looking at
the real estate. Oh my gosh.
For real?
And Griswold commented, it's a paranormal drama series. Elite special team handle the cases no one else can. Haunted and possessed houses that would scare would-be buyers away.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
God. And it's Canadian. That's fun.
That exists. That's
Oh my
amazing.
god.
But it has like
So-
Sarah Levy in it. Nice.
Kayla says about the Winchester House, her weird psychic told her that she had to keep building the house to keep the ghosts away. So yes, that's why she built the house.
I'm curious, like, how cool does a house have to be before you are like, oh, this is cool house trope? Because like there are well decorated houses, so like, how much is there something that for you is like, yeah, this is it, this is cool house to me?
It can't just be nicely decorated. It has to be like something I wouldn't see in a home decor magazine, right? Like there's skulls on the walls or
rooms with unusual purposes of like, you
Yeah.
can't just have like a den and a TV room.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm also thinking like I've seen and read houses that are, I guess, the same in one scenario, but like what makes it a cool house? Well, I'm thinking of like, oh, you see like the witch's house with their potion bottles, but I've seen that in books where like a character goes into the house or the hut or whatever, and it's like, oh man, there's a lot of potion bottles here, and then like leaves a couple minutes later, and I don't have that like, oh, cool house feeling. Whereas some characters go into a place and leave 5 minutes later, and I'm like, ooh, cool house. So maybe it's like the amount that the author focuses on it and like how much detail they put into it, because you can say, oh, here's some potion bottles and it was generally spooky, or you can say like, these are all the things that are next to them, this is how it smells, the
Yeah.
cauldron's on, like that kind of thing.
It helps if like a character has some sort of sense of wonder. Like it's not necessary because you can get like the characters that live there and it's all very normal. But it definitely helps if someone else is looking around and like, oh, cool house.
I think for me, it's like I really like it when a house is very heavily like the setting of the story, and it's so deliberate, I guess, that you couldn't necessarily transplant that house into another story and have it make sense. Like, oh, it's half a morgue, it's got skulls on the walls, she has like the cabinet of curiosities. You can't really transport that into a lighthearted romance and have that have no explanation to that. You know what I mean? Technically. So it's part of the tone of the book, I guess, is what I'm going for.
Yeah. Like how I think too, I was thinking about like how like lyrically you use your prose to describe it can definitely create that like whimsical feeling that y'all were talking about. I do love too a house that like is, you were talking about like can't be just transplanted someplace else or some other genre. I think too about like the location outdoors, like where is the house in the world, and like how does what's outside the house affect what's inside if it's a Florida house, like, and it's super curious, are like lizards getting in, like how do you keep the bugs out? Just like random things like that can make it feel even that much more grounded.
Yeah, actually that's a really good point, because like the house in the Mexican Gothic is like the location, not just the house, the location is very Gothic feeling to me. You have to like go way up on a cliff.
Super foggy.
It's super foggy. Yeah, like same with the Crimson Peak one, where it's literally sinking into the earth, and it's like what is it with the Crimson Peak one where it's like if the tide is out, you can't get there, or is that a different one I'm thinking of?
That's a real house. That's a
There is
castle.
There's a real castle that does that, but there's a movie too where
Is it the Woman in Black?
Movie. Maybe it's the Woman in Black, because I know I watched a horror movie and they did it really well because it's so isolated.
Yeah.
As soon as the tide comes in, you're trapped in the house. You have to wait till the tide goes back out, and I thought that was really clever. A clever way of having the setting be really isolating and spooky.
Yeah, man, no like late night 7-Eleven runs then, eh?
No going to the shops for you in the middle of the night, unless you have a rowboat, I guess.
I did like Kayla mentioned what makes a house cool in the middle of the city versus in a rural setting. And I thought that Alyssa Cole's When No One Is Watching, a thriller, did a very good job of like, we're in the middle of the city, this cool house is unsettling.
What was the one that we just literally just watched? The really cute one.
The
That
Willoughbys.
Willoughbys? Yes, thank you. Because we were talking about how much we love the house because it's a little tiny house and then it's got huge apartment buildings on either side.
Yeah, I think like in a city, if it's something that like stands out from everything else, is what makes
I think
sense.
something unexpected can be really fun in a city.
I feel like if I just saw that with no explanation, it would immediately tell me something about the owner. The owner is like obviously the only holdout here. I'm sure the owner has had people offer them money so they could tear the house down, and they've been like, no. You know, they're that one single house in the middle of this giant
Although now think about like
skyscrapers.
movie, they didn't work that hard. Like once you asked the parents to leave, they were pretty on board.
True, yeah, no, yeah.
I think they just like it never occurred to them to leave until they did, basically.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking, like, yeah, making a lot of weird houses are like not in highly populated places because it's hard to make like an apartment in the middle of the city like cool.
I think
but
it could be really fun though, like with like a cool house in the city or a cool apartment in the city if it's like bigger on the inside than it should be, kind of thing, you know? Or like you open the back door and there's a huge yard and you're like, we're in the middle of the city. Where does this yard come from? You know, something like that could be really fun in a city setting.
Well, I'm just thinking of actually like a good example of having a small apartment in a city and it being like a instance of cool house. In Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, it takes place in San Francisco, and one of the apartments that they end up going to, it's a queer novel set in the 50s, and they go into this like, I think it's a drag king apartment, but they go into this like queer apartment and it's just so different than our main character's kind of like colder, more minimalist home. And like that juxtaposition and then kind of like what it's so, you know, colorful, it's so warm, there's a bunch of friends there, and like that setting really like shows what she wants and like what she aspires to have. And so like in that way you can have a really small setting that represents so much to one character.
Yeah.
So
Misty Kate said every apartment in Only Murders in the Building, which like, yes, there's a bunch of cool apartments in the city. I was also going to say another like cool apartment would be the loft in New Girl.
Oh,
that
yeah,
really fun.
Yeah. I do think too a staple of the cool house in the city genre is house with rooftop access. On the roof.
Agreed.
Look at the city.
So what I was thinking with the Willoughbys was it reminded me of if you look up Chinese nail houses, that's the nickname they're given, are the owners that refuse to move when like a highway is going in, because like often corporations just come in and just plow everything over, and you get the odd holdout that won't. So if you look up and you just Google image them, it's fascinating. There'll be like a highway running around them, or they'll just be on this giant hill in the middle of nothing. Yeah, apparently it's quite common, and it's fascinating to me. That's the kind of vibe I had a little bit with the Willoughbys, although not as drastic.
Emmy mentioned love it when the house really contrasts the surroundings and instantly piques your interest. Like that was when you think of like a suburb one would be like when you have all the like perfectly manicured lawns, and then you have like the wacky hippie house.
You mentioned the suburbs, and I was thinking about the Disney classic Smart House. Houseful suburbs on the outside. Still pretty suburban on the inside. However, the tech does not want you to leave.
Is it like a horror movie or like
it's like a Disney Channel original movie. Kids. So the house has a robot lady in it, and the kids have a dead mom because of course they do. And the house lady decides that she's their mom now.
That sounds like a horror movie.
The carpet that absorbs mess. Yes.
Oh, that sounds nice.
All right, we have been going for about an hour. I meant to pull up what we're doing next week. Feels like we're due for a write-in.
Yep, it's a write-in.
Awesome.
And 2 weeks until our book club, where we're going to talk about the Willoughby's script, the Willoughby's book. You can read one or the other. You don't have to have read both, but we're going to chat a little bit about both depending on what everyone has read.
Still on hold for the audiobook. There's like, I think it's like 2 to 3 weeks left. I'm like, oh, I could get it or not. It's only 3 hours. So if I get it that afternoon, I'm fine. So yes, this has been a lot of fun. I think we mostly just gushed about Cool House, and maybe people want to write Cool House, which I am totally on board for. Or more spooky houses, also good. If you want more of this chaos, please like and subscribe. We are here every Sunday at 7:30 Eastern Time. But if you're here and commenting, you knew that already because you're always here and we love you for it. So yes, thank you all again. We will see you next week and have a great night. Bye.
Bye.